This is a conversation with Lorena Monda. Hi, Lorena.
Hello.
So you have been involved with Hakomi for quite a while.
Yes, I came to Hakomi as a therapist slash doctor of Oriental medicine back in the late 80s. And I was looking for a way to connect what I knew from straight psychotherapy. My journey took me through psychotherapy to looking for a way to connect with the body, and that's where Oriental medicine came in. And I noticed that I couldn't give up psychotherapy once I got people on the acupuncture table, that they often told me their stories, and I was looking for ways to really directly connect that to the body, connect what they were experiencing in their bodies to what they're experiencing in their psyches. And Hakomi was a perfect match for me.
Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
that happened almost 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still here.
So that double interest of yours in connecting what happens in the body, connecting what happens in the mind, and finding the pathway.
Yes. Yeah, and it's, in those 30 years, a lot's happened for all of us with those connections. We know a lot more now, and so that I think Ron Kurtz had a real incredible intuition, and working directly with direct experience gave us a lot of data about those connections.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And so maybe as you're talking about that experience of wanting to bridge the gap between these two, what happened as you were training, or you were relatively fresh as a Hakomi-trained therapist, and you started incorporating Oriental medicine with, that what Hakomi had been teaching you?
Yeah, I think it was dramatic back then because, those two areas were really separate. Oriental medicine has a lot of information about energy. It has a lot of information about the body. It has some information about the psyche, although it's mostly kind of theoretical. And so once I got mindfulness on board, it was really dramatic. So a dramatic example would be someone who came to me for chronic fatigue syndrome, and she had seen many practitioners, and we were able to, Oriental medicine is a kind of method where you do something to your client, and so, she'd be on the table, I'd be doing something to her, I'd putting needles, moving energy around, and at one point I decided it was just really the first time I decided let's try the mindfulness piece with this client. And so as her energy started to come up in the treatment, I could feel in her pulses that her energy was up. And I had her stay with that experience of having energy. And she had a memory on the table of being 3 years old and her running around kind of with the joy of a 3-year-old, and her mother saying to her father had a heart condition, and her mother saying to her, "Shh, do you want to kill your father? You're being too loud." And so she learned how in that moment she had this experience of remembering how she had to stifle her natural life force all the time. And 40 years later, it became chronic fatigue syndrome. And so, maybe not such a direct connection, but she was able in that session to see how she was still doing that. So as her energy came up, there was a lot of fear. And I would never have gotten to that without mindfulness. We could have, helped her get more energy. And then if she had some automatic kind of regulator on her energy, it would always stop. So that had been her history. So that was really dramatic. It was this simple addition of helping the client be mindful, and being mindful as something was shifting. And I think that's really kind of a key to Hakomi. The mindfulness piece obviously is a key. We know that. We've been doing that a long time. But one thing that's a key is that we work directly with experiences as it's unfolding. And from a therapeutic perspective, what that does is as the person, starts to shift, we get to know what the markers are in the shift. So,
let me interrupt you for a moment because, I want to come back to what you said about the importance of mindfulness. And that was a very beautiful example. But since many people have different definitions of mindfulness, maybe let's spend a little time about mindfulness as you see it in Hakomi. And I think this example is wonderful for that.
Great. Well, mindfulness, you're right. There are a lot of definitions. Mindfulness, as we use it in Hakomi, is turning our attention, both the client's and the therapist's attention, to what's arising in the moment. And we use that in Hakomi. It's different than sitting on a meditation cushion in that we use it in Hakomi to get at what we call the way the person organizes their experience. And we have this idea that we organize our present experience based on kind of past history. It's kind of a psychodynamic idea that the past actually organizes our present. And so we use mindfulness to really get at that. It's not just watching what arises and let it pass, but watching what arises and looking for the themes, looking for the things that don't arise, like the things that the person, we say, organizes out of their experience, out of habit. So we use mindfulness particularly for that.
Yeah. And so in that specific example, as the person was paying attention to, what organized their experience, but in the present moment, that physical sensation of being very present with that organization of experience was the bridge that brought them back to the experience of the past it was related to.
Yes, and that of course is where the body comes in, that the body actually has those, what Ron Kurtz called those indicators, those markers of experience as it's organized.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think one thing that's really, one thing that's unique about Hakomi is that we really go toward what we call barriers to nourishment, barriers to kinds of experiences that can bring happiness, that can bring more freedom, that can bring greater choice. And we really look for those as they arise in present experience. Now, a lot of body workers, a lot of body psychotherapists know how to look for those in the markers of the body, like the way people hold themselves. But we also look for those as they're arising in the moment, in the experience. And those barriers are obvious. They become obvious as we work in mindfulness. They become very clear.
So maybe let's talk about some example of barriers that you notice and work with.
Yeah, I mean a simple one I can just bring in from my own experience. I remember I was taking Tai Chi years ago, and I was sad. I had broken up I was in a relationship. We had broken up, and my Tai Chi teacher noticed that I was doing my Tai Chi kind of hunched over, and she kept asking me to pull my shoulders back and sit up more straight, or stand more straight. And I realized at the moment that I couldn't do it because I was sad. And she said, if you did it, you'd be less sad. And so that connection between how we hold ourselves and our emotional life is very strong. And so we look for those kinds of barriers. And then we look for the meanings that, in Hakomi, we look for the meanings that posture might have. We look for the the beliefs that are underlie that particular posture. And, I think what's beautiful about Hakomi work is that we are not just telling that to our client. We're not telling that, like my Tai Chi teacher told that to me, but we are actually helping the client discover that connection. We're there helping them in the moment see, okay, as I move my shoulders back, what happens? As I pull my shoulders in, what happens? That kind of specificity and that kind of precision is really powerful. It was really powerful for me as a client and as a student to see.
Mm-hmm. But so the difference with the Tai Chi teacher said, hey, you notice your posture, and if you opened up, you'd have a different experience. As a Hakomi therapist, you might draw the client's attention to the posture and then invite the client to explore changing the posture?
Yes, and that's we call that the experimental attitude. So all therapeutic interventions in Hakomi are experimental. They're not fixed, and so everything's an exploration. Instead of changing the client's posture, we actually have the client experiment with changing their own posture, and the mindfulness allows the client to see what the difference is, mm-hmm. and to make the connections for themselves that are important to make.
Yeah. So that's a moment of really the mindfulness, the paying attention to the experience of living and the possibility of changing it.
Yes. And the possibility of changing it, as you said that, I became really aware of something that really keeps me going as a therapist in Hakomi is that possibility is always there, that the possibility of something more. It's very hopeful. I did years of straight therapy, and so as a therapist, and it became almost there was a kind of predetermined quality to it. Like when you listen to people's stories, you get a sense there aren't that many stories, but when you're actually working with direct experience, each person is so unique. It's very alive and very hopeful. Like you see the resources as they unfold in the client when you work this way.
Yeah. So that is really observing and encouraging the client to have that creative experience. So is it possible to combine that with Oriental medicine, for having people on the table and doing something to them?
Yeah, it's really actually quite exciting because there are a few of us that are doing Hakomi with Oriental medicine, not many, and so we're really on this kind of cutting edge in Oriental medicine. To me, what's exciting is that I know if I put needles in someone, if I change what their energy pattern is doing, usually what happens is the new energy will kind of play out until the next kind of block or hindrance comes up. That's Oriental medicine works with moving energy. You have basically three things that you do with acupuncture. You move, you support energy that is deficient, you move energy that is stuck, and then you balance. So those are basically what you do. And so when you move a block that's stuck, and a block can be something that's created by something physical. It could be created by something emotional, as we know, as body psychotherapists. And it could be created by environmental factors. It could be created by anything. Or a deficiency could be created by a pattern. And this kind of dovetails with Hakomi. A deficiency in someone's energy can be created by a pattern where they have a kind of a belief that they can't take in a certain kind of nourishment. Or a deficiency could be created by a lifestyle pattern, as you know, We know that.
So,
And so,
could we maybe get a specific example to illustrate deficiency?
We do it in Oriental medicine, very specifically to the body. So we have a concept called chi deficiency. So chi deficiency appears as kind of a lack of energy. It could appear as symptoms like a weak voice, weak cough, getting cold, symptoms like that. So that's a simple kind of deficiency, physical kind of deficiency. Mm-hmm. But you can also have deficiencies that create and this again, this really dovetails with Hakomi, create kind of patterns in how we take in nourishment from the world. People, a basic psychological need is the need to be seen or the need to be appreciated. And when you feel seen and appreciated, for example, it actually affects your physiology. It affects your chi. It affects your body. It affects how you hold yourself. It affects how you put yourself out there in the world. And there could be some kind of deficiencies where people can't take in that kind of nourishment, where people push that kind of nourishment away, where people feel like no one understands them, for example. That would be a basic kind of psychological concept. No one understands me. And so then in Hakomi we say, if you have that the need to be understood as a kind of nourishment, and you can't take that in, you can't take that in for a number of reasons. Either it's not there, or you can't take it in because you don't see that it's there. You can't see the appreciation. Mm-hmm. Now, on an Oriental medicine level, that kind of psychological nourishment also creates an impact on the person's energy. So these, you can see how these two systems really go together. Like once we can start to break, I can change the energetic system in a person using needles, using herbs. But if I can use consciousness, I have something that goes beyond my treatment. It's really powerful. So for me, it's really exciting to have that tool, the tool of mindfulness. And then the tool that Hakomi brings us to basic psychological, Hakomi really maps out these basic psychological needs that we have. The need for safety, the need to be supported, psychological needs like intimacy, authenticity. We see that as a need, the need to really be ourselves and be authentic. The need for power or to have an effect on our world. The need to be appreciated, the need to belong. All those basic psychological needs that we work with in Hakomi actually translate into Oriental medicine. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so, in terms of the work of combining both, how would a session combining both look like?
Yeah, I do such a hybrid of everything that it's hard to say. People now come to me because I work with this way. So a lot of times I even work on the telephone. I started out working on the table primarily. So somebody would be on the table, and they would come in for some kind of physical something. And I tend to like to work with chronic things because chronic things always have a psychological component to them. Even if the psychological component did not create the condition, it's always, if you have a chronic disease, it does affect you psychologically. So we get on the table, I do the usual. I take a history, the person's on the table, and we just start with mindfulness. We start with mindfulness, and and we see just what, how these symptoms are showing up right now and what else goes with them. So if the symptoms are primarily physical, we see, are there any thoughts that go with these symptoms? Are there any, and some typical thoughts are, especially with chronic things, are things like, this will never go away. That's or, it's really hard, or, it's really screwing up my life, or, those kinds of thoughts. And, and it becomes a feedback loop. So the thoughts create, emotions. The emotions create thoughts. The symptoms create thoughts. It's a hologram.
Right.
And I think that's a nice thing that Hakomi's done for me is it's really eliminated this idea of causality in a way that there aren't many singular causes when you look at the whole of a person's health, physical health or emotional health. There are many conditions that create who we are in the moment. And so the person's on the table, we're looking at the symptoms, we're looking at, what's arising. We're seeing if there's some connection between these feelings that are arising and the symptoms that are arising. We're seeing if we can, I call it making small course corrections. If we can shift something in the moment, just energetically, without putting a single needle in, if we can just shift it by, having the client, kind of let the emotion process through. See what that does, for example. We can see, if, once people get the connection between what they're thinking and what they're feeling, what they're thinking and their physical body, that's a really powerful connection. So once, we do that as long as we can. I tend to intervene these days. This is what's different now, is I intervene the least amount that I can get away with. And then once the person has come to a place where it doesn't seem to move much anymore, or we want to stabilize something or some place that they've gotten to, then I put the needles in and see. And usually what's interesting is, again, working with direct experience has really taught me a lot. What I notice is that it's taught me a lot about the transformation process and kind of how it happens in waves. And so we'll move through to some kind of new place in the person, either physically, emotionally, psychologically. And we'll want to stabilize that with the needles, or we'll want to see something. Sometimes what will arise is the new kind of layer, the next layer down, or the deeper layer, or the block that's underneath, or so it's been lovely to have this tool of mindfulness, this tool, this kind of map that Hakomi gives us of the barriers to nourishment, and then to use that directly with somebody on a table, with these tools that I have, these needles that I have.
Does it sometimes happen to you to see a client, say, with whom your contract is to be a therapist, a Hakomi therapist, and you find yourself wishing you could use the needles? I mean, just are there situations where this might happen?
Yeah, it used to happen more, but I think this is what's the newest in my work, is that consciousness is as powerful as an acupuncture needle. I actually can do, this is a funny thing, but I can work with people who are, I teach a lot, so some of my students are acupuncture students, and they know the points, and so we can just bring our consciousness to those points, and the chi will shift. So lately, what acupuncture will do is you can set the energy up. You can use a lot of needles, and you can set the energy up in a particular pattern that you can't really do one thought at a time with consciousness. But, now when people come to me for just therapy, which actually probably mostly that's what I do now, and there's something that I know from my knowledge of energetic medicine, I just add that in. I make that I help them make that intervention. So, like back to my Tai Chi teacher, I'm a Qigong teacher, and so I can add, like maybe I'll notice that a person is making a gesture. So maybe they're moving their hands outward away from their body slowly, and I could actually have them. This is a Hakomi experiment. Slow that movement down and find out what it's saying. But I could also turn that movement into a Qigong movement. Let's do that movement with breath. Let's just do that movement as a movement very slowly. Let's see what changes if we just do the movement as a movement. And, so it's fun because I have the psychological if I need it. I also have the energetic layer, which to me is underneath the psychological. The energetic layer, the chi layer is really, the overarching layer of our experience. It's exciting to have that because sometimes clients in a psychotherapeutic sense can sometimes get stuck in their stories. Yeah. It's beautiful. In Hakomi, we go beyond the story, but and in energy medicine, we also go beyond the story.
So as you're talking, I have a sense of you as you're involved with a client that you see the situation at many levels. Almost like these the movies where you have a commentary that there's what's happening at the surface, and then there's the psychological layer, the energetic layer, and then you're navigating between these layers as you're watching.
Yes, and it's exciting because that's what we are. We are all these layers at once. And sometimes one particular layer will be speaking more loudly. So sometimes it'll be the emotional layer that's really speaking loudly. And sometimes it will be that place where the meaning that the person's making is speaking. And sometimes it's this, sometimes, the chi, one thing that's lovely about working directly with chi in this mindful way is it has this kind of intelligence. And we say this in Hakomi. We say this in many body psychotherapies, that there's a kind of intelligence in the body. And the chi layer is the intelligence of the body. It's really a kind of organizing principle, that once we get underneath our story, it has a mind of its own. It's quite beautiful to see it, and it connects us to our wholeness. I think, which is another area of my interest.
So this sounds like it might be a good way to end, but maybe if you want to see if something else needs to be said in conclusion.
Let's see. I guess what comes through in that silence for me is, there's this excitement about, we've been practicing body psychotherapies, we've been practicing energy medicine for a long time, and there's still a lot that we don't know. I'm very much interested in the emergent, especially now in our world. We have a lot of resources available, and how do they come together for us, and what's informing us right now? That's, for me, the excitement in this.
The excitement of the emerging.
Yes. All right.
Thanks, Lorena.
Yeah, thank you.
This recording is part of the Somatic Mindfulness and Relational Psychotherapy podcast. See the website relationalimplicit.com.
In that silence for me is, there's this excitement about, we've been practicing body psychotherapies, we've been practicing energy medicine for a long time, and there's still a lot that we don't know. I'm very much interested in the emergent, especially now in our world. We have a lot of resources available, and how do they come together for us, and what's informing us right now? That's, for me, the excitement in this.
The excitement of the emerging.
Yes. All right.
Thanks, Lorena.
Yeah, thank you.
This recording is part of the Somatic Mindfulness and Relational Psychotherapy podcast. See the website relationalimplicit.com.